Welcome to Happy Healthy Coffee Native, brought to you by Umble Coffee Company. All right, we have Tom Vincent on today, and we are excited to have him. He's with Texas Coffee School. I personally have gone through that school, and it helped me to know where the roadblocks were and the cautions and when I got the green light type of stuff were within my coffee journey as far as should I open a coffee shop. So that's what we're going to talk to him today about. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Tom, how are you, sir?
Doing great, Kenneth. Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, no problem. So tell us just a little bit about Texas Coffee School.
Yeah, so Texas Coffee School started back in 2010, and we specialize in helping people open coffee shop businesses. Everything from the hands-on coffee education and barista training to the actual business planning and launch phase as the operation system. So essentially, it's a turnkey for someone saying, I'm thinking about opening a coffee shop, but I don't really know what all that entails or where to start. Right. It's for anybody at any experience level, and we teach them to go all the way through that whole process to get from them thinking about doing this all the way through their opening day and beyond. And then on top of that, we also have classes for staff training as well as manager training and so on. So it's a pretty comprehensive program for anybody who's interested in getting into the retail specialty coffee business.
Cool. And so today we're specifically, and this is why I wanted to bring you on the show, is we're talking about should I open a coffee shop? And for most of the people that will be watching or listening to this, it's going to be after the pandemic, which has shifted some of the ways that we look at what does a coffee shop look like, what does a fast food equivalent look like, stuff like that. And I know that's something that you have seen, and you look at numbers and you crunch all the data. And so I'm just going to kind of let you pontificate on where are the barriers and where are the pitfalls and where are the places where, okay, if I have this and this, then I'm good to go. All that kind of stuff as far as coffee shop. And then every once in a while, I'm probably just going to randomly just kind of pick your brain.
Okay. Sounds fun. Yeah. So, just right out of the gate, should I open a coffee shop? There's a lot to that. So, I find that most people tend to start with like the technical aspects, find a location and, busy intersection. And that's obviously very, very clearly. But I always tell people, try to figure out, why in the heck do you want to open a coffee shop in the first place and not a snow cone stand or, whatever else? Why a coffee shop? Why this path? And something I always like to challenge people on, I just tell them, listen, if your purpose for opening a coffee shop is to make money, please don't do this. Because if that's your purpose, I know that sounds weird. It's like, does this guy have a school that tells people don't make money? No, that's not really it. It's more of, if that's your purpose, if that's the stimulus you need to get your rear end out of bed every single day to go through the beatdown that it is to get a small business off the ground and sustaining and to profitability, I hate to break it to you, it's going to be a few years before you actually get that stimulus of making money. And so if that's what you need to stay committed, you're probably not gonna see it through. And so I always tell people, try to figure out your why. What is your reasoning for wanting to do this? And I always tell people, and it's kind of a tip of the hat to the author Simon Sinek, if you're familiar with him, who kind of pioneered the idea of finding your why. And I always like to challenge people, listen, set aside for a second, that you want to open a coffee shop and how you want to do it and all that great stuff. And just try to think of what is it in your life that was missing that you were looking for when you said, you know what, I'm ready to move on from my current career. I'm ready to throw my hat in the ring and to be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. Like, try to think about, like, what is it that got you to that point? Not the stuff that you don't want in your life, but the stuff that you do want in your life. And if you can tap into that, the things that you're passionate about, the things that get you excited, uh, try to think of those things and use those things to create a set of core values for your business. And if you can
Yeah.
create a set of core values based on your why, on the fulfillment you need to get your butt out of bed every day, um, this will be really critical in helping this stay fulfilling to you, not just through the beatdown that it is to get a small business off the ground and sustaining, but also a few years down the road, once you get kind of into the rhythm of kind of doing the same thing every
Right.
day. Um, this is what's going to keep you committed and excited and fulfilled doing what you're doing. Because look, the reality is anybody and their cousin can stand up in the front of a classroom and teach you how to push a bunch of buttons, how to make some delicious coffee. But the reality is having great tasting coffee isn't going to set you apart. And that might be like a major like headline for you, but look, it's the most basic need of any business is having a good quality product. You're going to be in the coffee business, like of course you should have great tasting coffee, right?
Yeah.
That's a given. That's the most basic of basic customer needs. Followed right after that by just in a safe environment. So having a beautiful like interior design, great, fantastic. That doesn't set you apart. That's just to get on the playing field. And then having great customer service.
Yeah.
Those are the three most basic needs of starting a small business. And if you think those are the things that are going to set you apart, like I hate to break it to you, but look at every other coffee shop out there. They are
Yeah.
all literally doing the same thing. We have the best coffee. It's better than the Big Green Mermaid company. And it's
Yeah.
like, cool, man, awesome. Like we've been doing that for at least the last 15, 20 years in the specialty coffee industry. While it's new to you, it may not be new in general. So don't think those are the things that set you apart. Use your core values, the things that you're passionate about, and build a theme out of that for your business and use that to set you apart. But being passionate about coffee and loving people is a given in this
Yeah.
business. Try to
Well,
tap into other.
Well, and so just to kind of highlight some of the stuff that you said, and what I appreciate when I went to the Texas Coffee School is just the honesty, because what you don't want people to do is go into a multi tens of thousands, $100,000 plus investment and fail because they didn't do their homework on the front end. And so
Sure.
to do it for money, like you said, there's not a ton of money in, like, just, we'll say, for example, one coffee shop on Main Street, you know, and that's just, if you're in it for money, like you said, it's just not going to work. And
Yeah, and I
again,
want to be clear, like, I'm not saying don't make money. I'm saying make all the money. But I'm saying
right,
you're not going to if you're not passionate about what you're doing. You don't love what you're doing because you're not going to want to stay committed through it. But you
well,
most certainly and definitely can make money.
yes,
But to your point, this definitely is a volume-based business. So you
yeah,
have to be able to get this thing to scale.
right. And it's an endurance and it's not a sprint. And so when you think about passions, I think about, okay, what wakes me up in the morning and what am I thinking about first? And to me, that's a good litmus test for where are my passions. And those are things that I can sustain through those grueling times where it's not the inspiration, but the actual perspiration.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, and I also think you were talking about like great coffee, great customer service, great atmosphere. That was a aha moment for me because that was the default thought that I had was I'll do all this stuff and it'll be awesome. But that's what everybody else is doing. And it's not
Yep.
that you're not doing a good job at it. It's what I would call like a red sea. You know, like there is competition out there that's doing the exact same thing. And so to your
Yep.
point, what separates you and what separates, your coffee shop?
Yeah, I mean, kind of to what I was saying earlier, like if everybody is do. I mean, think about the last 5 coffee shops you've probably been to. I'm willing to bet that you walk through the front door, look for a point of sale system, you walk up towards it, a barista greets you, you look up, you look at a menu board, and I'm willing to bet it had an espresso, Americano, cappuccino, latte, mocha, Americano, cold brew, and probably 97% the same stuff as literally everybody else out there.
Yeah.
I bet when you look at the counter, there's one of maybe 4 major brands of espresso machines sitting on that counter with one of maybe 2 to 3 major brands of grinders sitting right next to it. I'm willing to bet that the language, the marketing is all the same, sustainability and direct trade. I bet all of that's pretty much the same. I'm willing to bet that it's served in a similar looking cup with a similar looking lid if it's to go. The user experience has pretty much been the same. And frankly, this is going to sound kind of messed up, but the coffee industry has been pretty stagnant for a while, in my opinion. It's just been a lot of people regurgitating the same stuff over and over and over, focusing on surface level stuff. And Frank, I'm not saying that stuff isn't important. I'm saying that that's a given just to get on the playing field, but that doesn't give you staying power. That gives you a shelf life of maybe 18 months. So I tell people, try to think of something that you're passionate about that maybe isn't coffee related.
Right.
Something that you really enjoy and something that you can maybe tie into this business and disrupt a little bit. Do something fresh to where it's not just we got to have a fresh, aesthetic design that's going to go out of style in 18 months and have the great coffee. Like, again, you're going to have all that stuff, but try to think of something that you are deeply passionate about beyond just coffee, and try to tie that into your business and build a theme out of that. So that way you can identify who your target audience is, who the people are. They're going to go, heck yeah, I want to drive by 4 other opportunities to buy coffee, to buy this coffee, because this is where I feel like I belong. Right. You're not selling cups of coffee in this business. You're selling a sense of belonging. Anybody and their cousin can make a decent tasting cup of coffee in their kitchen at home at this point. There's a lot of great gear out there. There's a lot of great roasters, like yourself, that you can do online, purchasing and have it sent right to your house. But the reality is people aren't just going to your coffee shop to buy your coffee.
Right.
They're going there to start their day feeling great, to have that sense of happiness. We are in the business of selling a way to start your day happy as coffee professionals. And you always have to remember that. If you think that you're in the coffee business, like, the reality is that you're not. Coffee is the catalyst, but it's not the actual end thing. It's just the technical aspect of it. But you have to figure out, why do people go in the coffee shops in the first place? And usually it's, because they want to have, obviously, a great cup of coffee, maybe better than what they could get at home, so that to an extent, right? But maybe they want to go because they're lonely and they want to get out of their house and they just want to have a human-to-human interaction. Or maybe they want to go and be in an environment where they can feel more creative. But ultimately, if you just pare it down to the most basic of basic human needs, people want to feel good. And you are in the business of making people feel good legally for a living, right? Yeah. And I mean, technically we're drug dealers, right? Caffeine is a drug, but seriously though, like, if you focus that and being authentic and not just trying to sell people the same old stuff, if you can identify your why, then build core values that you can hold yourself accountable for every single day for this business, then you can identify people who will go, heck yeah, I want to support that. As I said, they'll drive by 4 other opportunities to buy coffee, to buy your coffee. So now you can be specific and not just say all coffee drinkers are my target audience, but these are my people. And when you can identify your people, now you can say, where's there a large population of my people? Meaning the most fertile soil that you can most literally plant the crops that will grow and feed you, meaning plant your business in so it can grow someday. Now you can reduce your expenses in marketing because you're in an area that's densely populated with people who actually are into what you're into, and you're not having to spend a ton of cash on your behavioral changing marketing. You can spend more effort just on awareness generating marketing. So it really requires a lot of front into really thinking this through versus just getting all the technical stuff right. I would say that I've literally helped open 1,000 specialty coffee shops over the last 11 and a half years, all over the planet, literally all over the planet. And I can tell you, like, one of the most common mistakes that I see people make is they start with a location first before they figure out their why. And unfortunately, if you start with a location and you are like, okay, I'm going to get all the technical stuff right. I'm going to do, get the best espresso machine, get the best coffee beans, get the best, all the way down the line, right? Great, fantastic. You got the right tools. But the problem is what if you just planted and threw your anchor, so to speak, into an area that's densely populated with people that are really into what you're into? You just made it significantly more difficult for your business to survive. Right. You're going to have to work 10 times as hard. So I always tell people, like, if you do that, you're going to end up having to compromise those core values down the line just to be able to stay in business because you didn't take the time to know yourself before you began this journey.
Well, one thing that I have learned through the process with me is my why for my coffee brands fits so much better if it fits like my passions and my specific personalities as the coffee shop or brand owner. Like, it is so much more difficult for me to try to fit, we'll say, a community where you have already landlocked yourself in having a location, as opposed to, like you said, figuring out that why, which to me is what comes natural to you as the business owner, and then going and finding that tribe.
Yeah, exactly. If you can put that effort in first, because look, I've seen people throw a lot of money at opening coffee shop businesses. I mean, people, big business school backgrounds, or people that have a lot of success maybe in other industries. They're like, oh yeah, it's like I can come in and just throw a ton of money at this and we can just take over a market. It's like, no, what you can actually do is you can just take all that money and you can set it on fire.
Right.
Because you can get all the technical stuff perfect and still go out of business. Because if you're not authentic, it's going to be obvious. If you aren't doing something that you are truly passionate about, those who are passionate about it will definitely see right through you and know that, this place, they bought all the cool gear, but you could tell they literally have no clue what they're doing.
Tell me
this all the time.
Tell me about stuff like flow in a coffee shop, and even things like drive-throughs, and like how you balance and how people today balance what you and I would call kind of the shell of the definition of specialty coffee, and then like the taboos, like, oh, never have a drive-through because you have to talk to these people about this and they have to be able to stay here and it's got to have this music and it's got to have this grinder. And so just talk to that just a little bit.
Yeah. That's a great point, because I actually think that we are in a major shift culturally in the specialty coffee industry right now. I've seen a whole generation of baristas and coffee professionals recently kind of move on to a new kind of career just because they maybe aged out and kind of got to that next phase in life. And there's a whole new generation kind of coming in. And there's some interesting dynamic changes that I'm observing. But, to your point, what we'd always seen in this third wave specialty coffee industry was that, you have to be doing everything, manually with this level of machine and this grinder and so forth. And, I think that we're going to start seeing a shift away from that. And it's not going to be immediate. I think that we're still a few years down the line, but the reality is that technology is catching up to the point where the sensors out there are getting much, much better, and engineering in the espresso machines is getting better, and the technology in general is getting better. And we're getting to a point where machines, there are some brands of super automatic espresso machines out there at this point that are actually able to produce just as good a tasting coffee as the best baristas on the planet.
Right.
And they're able to do it consistently. That's the key, every single time. And they're able to do it at a much faster speed. And I'm not saying that it can't be specialty coffee if you don't have a manual espresso machine. At the end of the day, what's in the cup?
Right.
If what's in the cup tastes great, why argue with that?
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, look, I'm in the business of training, so literally, like, am I saying that manual machines are going away? By all means, no, they're not going away. But I think that people are going to start becoming more accepting that the idea of super automatic espresso machines that are able to not eliminate craft, but they're able to be utilized as a tool for us as coffee professionals and baristas to be able to shift our focus a little bit towards better customer service through maybe changing the user experience in the coffee shop to be different and more inviting, better across the board, and we can be more efficient. Because look, at the end of the day, this business, you have to be running incredibly efficient, and if you can be eliminating a lot of waste and you can be shaving time off of every transaction, I think that is definitely I know that that's a major win for the business in general. And I think that also if you kind of look post-pandemic, I definitely think that takeaway or to go or drive-through coffee, all of those things will be here to stay for certain. That people, I'm not discounting that people don't like to hang out in coffee shops. Certainly they do. But I think the hybrid model of, kind of having a hangout coffee shop with a drive-through capability is definitely going to be the model. And the reason for that is you want to stay lockdown proof for the future. I've actually had tons of former students that have drive-through capabilities, and they actually told me during the pandemic, when all the other businesses and coffee shops were just absolutely tanking, they were almost embarrassed to tell me that they were having the best years on record from those drive-through windows that they had, because it insulated them from that issue.
Yeah, well, and I think, when we're talking about the people who come and sit down and the people who go to the drive-through, I think those are different markets or tribes of people. And so, like, for example, I had a friend who went to, we'll say, a big box coffee shop, sat down, was doing some work early in the morning. There was nobody, this is post-pandemic, there was nobody in the store. She was the only one in there. And the line for the drive-through had gone around the building and was out onto the road. And so she said, okay, there's no line here. I'm going to time how long it takes that car to get from here all the way to their actual coffee. And it was 24 minutes.
Yeah, that's insane.
It is. But that shows you how strong that tribe is.
Yeah. And something that you have to be mindful of is, like, who has set the standard for drive-thrus, right? It's the Golden Arches and the Big Green Mermaid, right? I mean, they've set the standard for what people's expectations are. And if you're trying to bottleneck everything through a manual espresso machine in a drive-thru, like, let's be realistic. You're gonna be leaving money on the table, and frankly, if you make someone late for wherever they're trying to go, or you make them wait too long in a society used to instant gratification, you're not going to last very long.
And my personal opinion is with the drive-through, as opposed to when somebody comes in the shop, I definitely see some value in a manual espresso in the shop, because part of it is you are showing them that craft. It is part of a show, but they don't see that show in the drive-through,
Sure.
And so why?
I've certainly seen people kind of do that both ways.
Yeah, and so I just think, and again, this is my personal opinion, is I don't see any reason you couldn't use an automatic espresso for the drive-through, but it could be different for your in-house people.
Sure. And the thing that I think is a question that we should be asking ourselves is just like, why are we at that point? Like, if you really think about it, super automatic espresso machines have a real culture problem in the specialty coffee industry. There's machines out there right now. If you look at, for instance, like the Eversys
Yeah.
espresso machines, if you look at the Cameo and you look at their E4 or the Enigma machines that they've come out with, those things are literally giving me latte art level milk perfectly every time.
Yeah.
They are self-calibrating shot times and giving me perfect shots every time, and they're doing it in a fraction of the time it takes me to weigh out my shots, grind dose, distribute tamp, and pull those shots. They're shaving almost 20 to 25 seconds, even more sometimes, off of every single transaction.
Yeah.
And if they're giving me the end result in the cup, we have to really ask ourselves, like, is this bad? Like, I don't think it is. I don't think it's bad at all. And I think that, frankly, a super automatic machine could it could give us more time in front of the customer to actually educate them on what they're drinking and to
that's a really good point.
Have that interaction that you wouldn't have been able to have because your head's down over here. And I'm not saying that there aren't some amazing baristas out there that are able to do that, but the reality is anybody in the coffee business right now knows that turnover is crazy.
Right.
That it's absolutely insane. And it's the worst we've ever seen it. Staffing is incredibly difficult right now. And I think that a super automatic espresso machine, can really alleviate a lot of the consistency issues that you're going to get into with just constant turnover of staff, because now you're taking expensive and time-consuming training and making it to a more minimum. And look, I'm not here to advocate for. I literally have over each of my shoulders manual espresso machines.
Right.
But I love them. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for them. But I'm saying that as a specialty coffee industry, I think we need to be more open to the idea that craft doesn't necessarily have to be a manual espresso machine. I think that we can open that up now that technology is giving us better tools and enabling us to do better things with these tools, and allowing us to free up our time and our workflow to where we can show what that user experience is that ultimately is greater for the customer, that's ultimately greater for the coffee shop owner, and it's ultimately greater for the roaster, and it's ultimately greater for the farmer. Yep. So I think it's a conversation that we really need to start being more open to in the specialty coffee industry, because I think that that's really the only thing at this point holding super autos back is the culture issue. It's like, oh, it's not handcrafted. And I go, is handcrafted always better? I'm willing to bet this machine will do it the same way every single time. And I'm willing to bet that barista on bar won't. And so,
and again,
there's that.
I think it depends on what your customers, what their reaction is. If we're doing it for us, then again, my personal opinion, like, I don't think that that's a good enough reason. But if the customer, and we have to meet them where they are, if for the most part either they don't care as long as the cup is consistent and it's fantastic, or like you said, which I thought was a great point, you can use those extra 25 seconds to educate, then at the end of the day, I think it's fine. I say the same thing about coffee beans. The coffee beans do not know what type of roaster I roast them in. They don't. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, if I can make a roasted bean that is on a nationally competitive scale from a machine that's not like a top 2 or 3, branded machine, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
Kenneth, here's what I can tell you after nearly 20 years of being in specialty coffee and being in when the second wave was still a thing, all the way through the beginning and all the way third wave, all the way through now. Look, as coffee professionals, we are obviously passionate about coffee. We are excited about it. We want to share what we're passionate about with other people. And I think that a major problem in the coffee industry is that we focus on impressing 0.03% of coffee drinkers out there that are the super nerds just like us. But the reality is that is not the majority of people. Definitively, that is not the majority of people.
Correct.
And if you're focused on impressing this many people, you are alienating this many people out there. And that is horrifically bad for the business, but it's also horrifically bad for specialty coffee. My whole philosophy is make specialty coffee inclusive and approachable for regular everyday people from small town USA all the way up to big cities and everything in between. My benchmark is can I bring my dad to your coffee shop and can he feel like he's not stupid for not knowing what a natural processed Ethiopian coffee is?
Yeah.
Good coffee doesn't need a sales pitch. Good is good, right? At the end of the day, people will remember how you made them feel through your experience at your coffee shop. They'll remember how you made them feel through what they tasted and so forth. But if you can make an experience that's, I can definitively tell you that the average customer does not care, to your point, what espresso machine it's made on. That might be blasphemy for most folks in the specialty coffee. Guy Tom's out of his mind.
It's blasphemy for those like 0.03%. And again, we love those 0.03%, but like even if you take like Umble coffee, for example, Umble is like a Southern colloquialism for humble. Like your grandma would say, he's so humble. So when you talked about your whys and your passions, one of our things going in was we saw kind of a standoffishness and kind of at times, even though I think they don't realize they do this, like a snootiness to a lot of specialty coffee. And we wanted to, like you said, be able to bring your dad or your grandpa in and be able to meet them where they are and ultimately them have a cup of coffee that they enjoy while we still maintain that passion and caliber as far as specialty coffee goes.
Kenneth, about 6 or 7 years ago, I was invited to speak at an event called Barista Nation out in Los Angeles. And the topic I was asked to speak on was man versus machine brewing, right? And what was interesting about this was everybody has in their mind in the specialty coffee industry that, handcrafted, handmade, hand pour overs are always going to be better than what a machine can do.
Yeah.
And so I was really curious about this, and I didn't want to just kind of regurgitate my opinion and my feelings the way many tend to do in this industry. I wanted to actually gather some data. So I actually conducted a study of nearly 50 specialty coffee shops that I went to and just ordered a pour over, be it a Chemex or a V60 or a Kalita, whatever, right? And I started a timer from the time I placed my order to the time I received my finished beverage. The average time was 14 minutes from the time I placed my order. That is absurd, right? And so something that I was also kind of curious about was like, do people as customers really care about watching us pour water and make a beverage?
Right.
And I challenge it. There was quite a few people in the audience at this, and they were just like, of course they care. And so I had 2 United States Brewers Cup finalists come up on stage with me and go head to head with me and a batch brewer. All right, and we all had the exact same coffee. They both had Chemexes, and they were doing their pour overs like, I'm gonna beat this guy with this. I just took 10 minutes to program my batch brewer, and brewed a phenomenal batch of coffee, right? And blind taste test. With just some regular everyday, coffee drinkers all the way up to licensed quality graders, right?
Yeah.
100% of them chose my batch brew coffee as tasting better than by the guys that are literally the best of the best at this in the world.
Right.
And so I challenged people.
That says a lot.
Actually care? Do people actually care about you pouring that water? And I said, and are you really that proud at how you pour water? I pour water so much. Like,
well, and I think another thing.
Let me finish the thought. So this is where it got really crazy. So now I started observing others who were ordering these pour overs in coffee shops. And I noticed that while the barista was doing the pour over, most of them were just on their phones. Like they really didn't care at all about the water that was being poured to make their coffee. What they wanted is a delicious tasting, better tasting cup of coffee than what they would have gotten off of a batch brewer that was considered, like this is the $2 cup of coffee that's quick, whatever. This is the super fancy, Kenya, whatever coffee that was a pour over. It should be better for, $5 or whatever that they were charging for. And what we found, unfortunately, was most of these pour overs ended up tasting really under extracted.
Yeah.
We found that
I've had that experience.
They were, yeah, because the barista's distracted, maybe doing something else, or they just don't have a great technique, or whatever that may be. So we found that in-cup results were worse. Out in the field, we found that the time took forever. We found that the customer, what they didn't care about really was how you poured the water. They cared about how you interacted with them. They wanted you to be talking to them, asking them how their day was, telling them about the coffee and being educated. They didn't necessarily care as much about what you physically manually did. So if we can look at that at the bigger picture across the board, for espresso machines, pour over coffee, maybe going to something like the Marco SP9 or like the Curtis Seraphim or something along those lines that are doing the pour overs for us and giving us the ability to utilize tools to be able to have those interactions with the customers to educate them about the coffee and make them feel good. I think we're doing the coffee industry as a whole a better service, and to being able to know more about the coffee and to be able to see the higher value proposition there. Across the board.
One thought, that one aha moment I had literally while you were talking is, well, two things. One is, if you look most of the time at what people are doing after they order and when they pick up their thing, they're not looking behind the bar. They're either looking at their phone or they're talking to somebody that they are meeting up with. So that's one thought. The other thought is kind of to what you said, is if we automated it, and you and I are not saying that that's the be all end all, but if we automated some of that stuff, could we then actively use that time to engage the customer and do a little education, figure out what kind of coffee they like, what their dog's name is, all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, still, even doing that, instead of 14 minutes, it took 8 minutes round trip,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, look at your coffee making equipment, not as actually, the best way I can describe this is like, would you rather use power tools or would you rather use a drill that, you have to hand crank? It's like, these are tools. These are tools that are a means to an end, right? Use them as tools. Don't try to force it into just hand, drilled so it's going to be better. Like, it's not, man. Like, it's still, a hand drilled hole is going to be a hole no different than a power drilled hole, right?
Well, and I think some of those,
a strange analogy, but
no, it's not. And some of those disruptors, then either we have two choices: we stick our head in the sand, or we pivot and we figure out how to adjust and still be great at what we do with different tools or different approaches. So
yeah, I think at the end of the day, I mean, it really does go like, what do you want out of this? Is your why, right? And don't be afraid to have a point of view. Plant your flag in the ground. Say, this is what we believe. This is what we're passionate about. This is who we are. And once you know those things, then go find a place to plant that flag where there's going to be people that rally to that flag. And you're not kind of going against what people want in that area. Go where they want you. So it kind of plays back into what we were originally talking about. But I find, Kenneth, frankly, that in this industry, a lot of people are focused on fitting in and seeking pure affirmation that, oh yeah, like, we got the right gear, we're doing coffee the right way. Now our peers will think that we're cool. Cool, man. Are they paying you? No? Okay.
They're not.
Why are you wasting your time trying to impress them?
All right.
Focus on being authentic and not just trying to fit within the four walls of what the current specialty coffee industry is. Be focused on being a part of making the coffee industry what it's gonna be next. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to disrupt. Come in, have a point of view, be unapologetic for your point of view. Seek inspiration from outside the four walls of the specialty coffee industry, and bring that into your coffee shop. And now you're memorable. Because think about it. If you think of all these coffee shops out there, there aren't a lot of memorable ones out there for me that I've
Yeah.
been to in recent years, because they're all literally doing the same thing. But I would remember a place that was doing something very go, whoa, like that's really neat that
Yeah.
they thought to go that route. And it's very on brand for their belief system. And you can very much tell what they're into and what they're passionate about. Um, and I think that if you're not afraid to disrupt, people will be talking about you. And if
Yeah.
people are loving you or hating you, either way, they're talking about you, which is letting other people know about it.
Yeah,
And
which is good
the
marketing.
worst thing you could possibly be is just regurgitating the same old stuff, because now you're playing it safe, and safe is forgettable. Safe is mediocre. It's something that's got a short shelf life. Here today, gone 18 months later.
Well,
So don't be afraid to have a point of view and be unapologetic for your point of view. Just make sure that there's other people that have your point of view too, and go
yeah.
figure out where there's a lot of them and put your business there, so then it can naturally take off and grow. But don't try to put it somewhere where that point of view wouldn't be welcomed.
Well, we appreciate you coming on today, Tom. And
Yeah,
where can people go as far as like website wise if
sure.
they want to learn more about Texas Coffee School and maybe
Yeah.
even come down there and hang out with you?
Yeah, so just texascoffeeschool.com, all spelled
That's
out, no
easy.
abbreviations. Yep, and then just on Instagram at Texas Coffee School, again, all spelled out. We're there as well.
Cool.
And we have all of our classes, but we also, I like to post in our blog a lot of different, stuff like what we're talking about
Yeah.
here, and just to share some tips and things that we're constantly thinking about, because we're always trying to push forward and trying to evolve our program as the world evolves, as culture evolves,
Yeah.
as the specialty coffee industry evolves. And so we're always trying to integrate these new things and share these ideas with people out there on our site. And that's totally free in our blog.
Well, and another thing that I like that you do and that y'all do there is you go back and you data mine on the people who have come through and the coffee shops, and you actually have numbers, that you can watch
Yeah.
over time, so that literally you know that you're giving people the most up-to-date info on what they
Yeah.
should do as far as if they should open a coffee shop, how they should do it, what they should look for. And then also I
Yeah.
know, because I follow you on Instagram, y'all put a lot of that stuff up on there. So I appreciate
Sure.
you coming on, and we
Yeah.
will catch you next time, man.
Thanks, Kenneth.
All right.
Glad to have been able to be on your show.
All right. See ya.